And I think we'll start. I'm just going to introduce Dani Diamond real quick for anyone that doesn't know him. He is a Moab master. He is a portrait and fashion photographer in New York City, but based in New York City, lives in Connecticut. He shares all of his secrets to success. So if you have any questions for him, ask away. And he also does some webinars, tutorials, how-tos on his website. So definitely check them out. He also does a one-on-one mentorship. So that's also on his Instagram and Facebook. You can find all the links there. It's also on his website. There's an awesome video that he created of building his portfolio. So if you go to YouTube, we've pinned it at the top of this chat, if you can see it. It's a whole YouTube video on how he made the portfolio that's actually sitting right in front of him. Took him 18 months. It's amazing. So definitely check out the video, but we'll be going through how he created that all today. And remember to just put your questions in the chat section and we'll be going through them. There's also an offer section. So check out the offer section. It is a link to all of the printing essentials that Dani uses. So all of the paper, the printers, anything you really need to find that he's used to create his portfolio. So definitely check out that link. And I'm going to toss it over to Dani and start with a question about why create a portfolio in the first place.
What's up, guys? Thank you so much for tuning in. I love these things. I love these live things. I could literally be wearing a shirt, but then boxers and no one will know. You know, it's very different than doing this in person. But I'm excited to do this. I rarely ever talk about my portfolio. Us photographers are in a digital age. We just talk about Instagram. You see me on Instagram, but you barely ever see anything printed in person, which is what the main factor to drive me to build my portfolio was. There's a lot to talk about here, but I can't talk for 1 hour straight. So you guys have to send out those questions my way so I can take a break and answer questions. Okay, so let's start off. I'm Dani Diamond. I'm sure most of you guys know if you're here. I'm no one special, by the way. I'm just a photographer, just like everyone else. And for 10 years, I've been shooting, posting on Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff. And that's obviously how I built my name and got out there. But I made myself a goal from the first day I started that I want to make a portfolio for myself. So the first thing was I'm going to wait 10 years till I have a solid amount of amazing images. And once I have that, I'm going to go and use my other hobbies that I have, like woodworking, to build myself a portfolio. So I set aside about a year to build this, and most of it went to researching because I know nothing about printing. I know nothing about building a book, you know, binding, leather, all that good stuff. So it wasn't an easy project, and I'm not saying that everyone should go build their own portfolio, but I believe that everyone should have a portfolio, period, eventually. I use this now to once I find my clients, to present my work this way. Once I'm sitting in front of a person, all I try to do is get a meeting. Once you have a meeting with a client, once you show them this is your salesman right over here. You know, this is my salesman. I pull it out, I put it on their lap, and I don't have to say a single word. They just open this thing up, and before they even open it up, it's so impressive. It's so big. You see how big this is? You could barely even hold it to look through it. You do have to put it down on the surface, and it's just really impressive. And even if you put mediocre images in a portfolio, I promise you, it's so impressive that it just like, wow. And like, there are a lot of images in here that are not my favorites when I looked on the computer at them, but once I printed them out and saw them in print this large, the quality, the colors, everything, it just comes to life. It's just so amazing for anyone who hasn't done printing yet. But let's first talk about the construction of this. I have some images to show you. Like Paige said, there is a video that I made on this. It didn't go fully in depth in my building of this. Like I didn't talk much about the technical side of it, so I will try to give a quick summary of everything that went into building this. Now, there are obviously lots of online places that you could that build like the cover, and then you just do the printing yourself, or you could even do the printing online someplace and have them mail it to you. But I decided to start from scratch. So the first thing I did was I went to a leather shop, and you know what? I'm going to share my screen now. Let's see if I could do that.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, we do have a question already, and maybe this is an opinion question, but do you have any suggestions on what makes a good portfolio from a poor portfolio?
I think that probably the hardest aspect of building this portfolio, and that was a really good question. Keep your questions coming, guys. The hardest aspect of a portfolio is choosing the images and having a nice flow to your images, so that after the third page, people don't get bored of it and be like, okay, this is not cohesive. This is, you know, it has to be easy on the eyes. So sometimes building a portfolio is not about your best work. It's about your most, just showing how diverse you are, while having a nice flow to it. So what I did is I did the first half of my portfolio, all my women's fashion, that I do all the women's clothing line. The second half is the children's, just because I could skip straight to all the children's if I'm meeting a client on the go, which cares for children photography and children fashion. The next step was to do things by color. So if you look through my portfolio, and let me unshare my screen again. Okay, so if you look through my portfolio, I try to do things by color. So if you look at this page over here, I know it's upside down, but you get the idea. If you look in the shadows, there's a lot of blue, and then there's lots of warm tones in the highlights. These are two shoots that were done 6 years apart, but the color flowed really well. I also love that this shot is all about simplicity, and this one has a lot of other stuff going on in it. So it kind of gives a balance to both, and your eyes don't go crazy when you're on this page, not sure where to look at. Same thing over here. I chose a super simple and clean shot on the left, then 2 shots on the right. So I tried to do this by color and just by general composition. Over here, you can see 4 very similar portraits next to each other. Again, different shoots, but I made sure that the colors worked really well across all the images. So the way I did this actually, which is the hardest part, was to have a bunch of friends come over, and what I did was I printed all my images on 4x6s from Moab, and you can see over here how I have all my images printed out here, all like 200-300 images I printed out, and then I stacked them up on a table, and I had friends come over, and they were all laid out, and they got to choose between all of the images, and they've kind of made piles. So they would go through all the images and then choose 3 images they think should be on a page, and then they would just put it down for me. So for example, over here, if you look at this, I know this picture is lopsided on the side, but you get the idea. So what they did is they said that we think these 2 images over here, these of the same model, would go nicely with this other image. So basically I printed by 4x6s, and they helped me choose the layout of my portfolio. So if you go to this page, you'll see how the end results ended up. I don't know if Paige could make me full screen, or I have to unshare myself, but if
yeah, you have to unshare.
I have to unshare. All right, no problem. So you can see how I ended up. The layout of the portfolio is exactly how you saw in those 4x6s. So having other people help you with the layout is the way to go. Get other set of eyes to help you choose which images, the layout, and just let them know. Like the people I had help me, they're not photographers. They were my wife, my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law, and a couple friends. They all came over to my house, and we laid all the images on the table, and I told them that the most important thing is just having images that are together that flow really well in terms of color and just overall composition. So that would probably be, I know that was a long answer, but that would probably be the most challenging part of making a portfolio, and I think the most important part of the portfolio. Everything else, literally everything else, like the printing, all that stuff, you can outsource that if you don't want to do it yourself, but the layout is all in your control. That's something that is totally up to you to do. Okay, so I forgot what I was about to talk about. Okay, so let's go back to sharing my screen so I could show you how the process of A to Z of me making my portfolio. So the first thing I did was I went to a leather shop, and you can see all these different leathers over here. I came home with, if you see over here, with about 10 different leathers that really grabbed my eye. Then I went to my woodworking shop where I had a ton of different wood, which I chose from, and I pretty much just, you can see the leathers laying out on top. I was matching leather with wood, so I went with a darker leather, which is right over here. And then it's like a dark brown. It didn't have too much going on it. It had like just a nice texture versus like if you see this leather in person, this leather would be like, wow, this is a really cool piece of leather. But when I put it up against the wood, it was way too busy. So putting them next to each other really helped me out. And then I ended up going with this wood called wenge. It's a South African species of wood. This is like the natural color of it. Let's see if I could show you. And a lot of woodworking went into it. They had to split a thicker piece into smaller pieces, which then I went ahead and I glued up. I'm trying to show you pictures, not videos. These videos are getting very confusing. And so you can see over here how I glued up 2 pieces of wood to construct the cover. And I had the leather and the paper over here, as you can see. And once I had that cover, sorry. Confusing. I got like 3 monitors in front of me. Okay, so once I had that cover made, I went ahead and I put everything together to see how it looks. So here's with the leather cut, and then you can see the other vertical piece of wood on the left, which is the spine. And I think it'll be easier to show you guys in person in my portfolio how this thing works. So pretty much the spine is a piece of leather that goes around right over here. You can see it going around the spine, and it's glued to the front and back cover. You can see inside how it's glued over there. I used a 2-part epoxy. I tried different glues, a 2-part epoxy where you mix 2 different types of glue together to have a really strong hold. That's how I attached it to the wood. And then this piece over here, these pieces on the edge, they are actually not glued or anything. If I were to take out these screws right over here, which I think I bought these screws on Amazon, these screws are made for binding of a portfolio. You can see the back. So you have a nut and a screw. If you take those screws out, then you could take the pages out. So every single page in my portfolio is removable. So as I upgrade my work, I could do that in my portfolio as well. Just take these screws out. And for those wondering how these pages are attached, I think it's called Pinot Grigio or something. Paige, maybe you could jump in there and correct me if I'm wrong.
Pinot Zangaro, I believe.
Pinot Zangaro, exactly. It's basically a clear piece of plastic. You can look inside here. It's a clear piece of plastic with 3 holes in it, and then it has like a Band-Aid. It works exactly like a Band-Aid. You take the sticker off and you stick it right on to the page, and then each one of these pages has an individual Pinot Zangaro strip on it. So it's pretty simple. The size of my portfolio is 11 by 17. That's the size of the paper, but the actual portfolio is probably about 1.5 to 2 inches wider and about 1/2 inch taller than the paper. So I chose 11 by 17 because that was a standard size. I didn't have to cut the paper. I felt like the smaller size and the bigger size were either too small or too big. This is super impressive. The only downside of such a large portfolio is that it does not fit into a backpack, which is why I had to sew myself a pouch that holds my portfolio. So there's suede on inside, same exact leather that I used for the spine. I went back to the leather store and bought the same exact leather for the outside of the bag. I didn't get around to making myself a shoulder strap yet, so I just stole it from one of my camera bags, and it does the job. So the construction of this bag, it was rather difficult because the leather was super thin. So what I ended up having to do is I lined the inside of my bag with canvas. So the material inside of here is canvas, And what I did is, again, I used some kind of leather glue. It was to glue the canvas to the leather, and then I glued the suede on top of that just to give it a much nicer look on the inside when you open it versus seeing a bunch of this ugly canvas. So the canvas, you don't really see it when the portfolio is here. You only see this over here. You can see that there's magnets in here. You see those magnets? I just cut a slit before I sewed the edge. I just kind of cut a slit and I slid 2 pieces of magnet into there. And I did the same exact thing down over here. The bag took me about 2 days to make from when I started it. And I know I'm jumping around here between different elements. I'm just excited about my portfolio. So I just keep finding like different things to talk about. So for those wondering how I did my name in the cover, this I took to one of my friends that has a laser machine. I took the entire portfolio, I put it into the laser machine. I took my my text and logo for my name. He put it into the computer, and as he was right before he went ahead and lasered in my name, which this has, like, you could feel the texture over here because it burnt into the cover. So let me show you really cool how I came up with the idea of making it black matte on the inside. You're probably wondering, how did you paint the inside so perfectly? So let me show
Dani,
you.
before moving on to that, we just have one question. I'm not sure if you'll know, but do you know what the weight of the leather you used was?
No, I honestly have no idea. I went into like the garment district of New York City, and they just like, there were just tons of leather over there. It's like 50 different leathers to choose from, and I just went with this. It is very thin. It's super thin. And look at this issue that I had since this leather was so thin. When I first constructed this, I opened it up and it was wobbling all over the place. Like over here, it would suddenly pinch at the top. That's how wobbly it was. So what I did is I just went to a different, I went with a different leather, and I glued that second, much thicker and durable leather to back with this leather that you see right now. So I'm using the leather that I like. However, on the inside, if you look inside, it's a much lighter brown. You see how light that brown is? This is a different leather than my cover and than my bag, and also the outside. So if you look really close over here, you can see that I sandwiched. Can you see that?
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see that. You can see that I sandwiched 2 leathers together. So I took all the pages out, I laid down my portfolio, and I just glued another piece of leather to that leather, much thicker, much stronger. And now you can see how durable it is. That cover is not going anywhere. And this is a heavy cover. This is a very heavy cover. So that was important that I did that, so my portfolio wouldn't wobble all over the place and fall apart. There was a big learning curve to this, and the purpose of today is not really for me to convince you to go do this yourself. I don't know if I would do it again, because I love doing woodworking, and I'm a crazy dude to take on projects like this. But the purpose is just to show you guys what went into this. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again to show you guys how I got my name. And I think this was the coolest part of making the cover. Check this out over here. So what I did is, before he even put it into the laser machine, I took painter's tape, and I put painter's tape all over the cover. Then I put the cover into the machine, and then he lasered through the painter's tape. And like that, I was able to just put this plastic around the cover, and then spray paint with a black matte spray paint, right, and then just kind of peel off the cover. So this is how it looked. You can see after I painted it, and then I just took off the, let's see, you can see over here, you can watch me peeling off the tape. See how I was able to just take off the tape, and like that, the spray paint didn't go anywhere else on the cover. Is that video coming through clear?
Yeah, yeah, looks great. We do have a lot of questions about the layout and papers that you're using, but I think we'll wait till we kind of get more to the inside, and I'll go through all of those questions.
Okay, so let me see if there's anything else I wanted to show you about that. I think I pretty much covered everything. Again, you guys could watch my video on me making this. There's like a 12-minute video of me making my portfolio. So, and you know what? Maybe I'll just share the link. You know what, Paige? Let's share the link to this entire folder of images.
Sure. And we can also send an email afterwards with all these links to
okay.
to this and to the video again and to all your printing essentials.
Okay, just for now, for anyone who wants to click, I did add it to the chat. Okay, awesome. So let's get down to talking about the inside, and yeah, you don't have to see pictures of my kids over here. That's fine. Yeah, so let's talk about the inside. So how did I choose the paper? How did I choose the paper to do this? There's so many different types of paper. How did I get into printing and figure out how to do printing? And this was a very hard element for me, and probably why it took me so long to make my portfolio, because I had no idea where to start. I know nothing about printing. I never printed in my life. So the first thing I did, I started watching reviews on different printers. I wanted to spend right around $1,000, between $1,000 and $1,500 on a printer. So I really limited my options to which printers I wanted. There was a Canon printer, and then there was an Epson P800. So I watched videos, a lot of videos on YouTube, and I'm going to try to find the name of this guy on YouTube. And he was a huge help, because this was the printer that he spoke about at all times. This is the printer that he uses. His name is Jose Rodriguez. And if you just search on YouTube P800 versus Canon or whatever, you're going to come across all of his videos on this. And he talks about every single element, every issue, from filling ink to fixing the printer, from the settings that you should have in Photoshop or Lightroom when you're printing. He has answers to all this stuff. So I'm not going to tell you guys exactly how to print right now, but when you do get into printing, hit up this guy's channel on YouTube, and he's going to explain anything. You just Google your question, and search the question on his channel, and he's going to have a video about this. This guy's a ton of videos. So my first issue, before I even got into printing, what paper do I use? There's so many papers. So I heard a lot about Moab from my friends. Clay Cook, I think, uses Moab, and he made his portfolio with Moab. However, here's the thing. One paper that works for one person doesn't generally work for another person. So if you're doing landscaping, fine art prints, very different kind of paper than if you're doing, let's say, fashion work like me. And also the colors of your images, if you're a black and white shooter, then the paper that you should use is different than the paper I'm using. Because, for example, the paper I use, which is the Entrada rag, it has but it has a warm undertone to the paper. And so it makes my images, like the skin in my portfolio, in my models, it makes it look very tanned and rich, which I really love. So how did I decide which paper to use? The first thing I did was reach out to Moab, sent them an email. What's up? I love you guys. Let's get together and partner up. And I need you guys to help me choose the paper for my portfolio. So I think I spoke to Paige, was the first person I spoke to, and the last person. She said, go ahead and order a pack of sample pack from us. And I think it's 25, it's like 25 different papers that they have. I ordered that sample pack, and I printed the same exact image. It was like a set of images, like 2 or 3 images. I printed it on every single paper from that pack. I ruled out about 10 of them right away, because they were like stationary papers and different papers that I definitely wouldn't be using. Like, some of them are extremely thick, and you don't want paper that is way too thick for your portfolio. Otherwise, when you open it, it's like opening a piece of cardboard. It's not going to lay nicely. For example, if you see my portfolio now, you see that nice curve right there. You're not going to have a curve like that. It's going to just, the pages are just going to be like sticking out, like, and it's also, your portfolio is going to be double as thick, which is not good. So I didn't want to go with too thin, because then it's not as impressive. I think I went with the 190 GSM. Is that what it's called, Paige?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I went with the 190. I think it was right in the middle. of the 2 or 3. So they have different kinds of papers. And then they have, not within each paper, like the Entrada rag, they have different thicknesses of the paper. So it's the same exact paper, but different thicknesses. So I went with the Entrada rag 190. Again, buy a sample pack, and you're able to print out your images onto a ton of different papers that they have and see which one works. So once I had all my, I narrowed down to maybe 6 or 7 different papers. I took them all and I laid them out on a table with just regular fluorescent interior lighting. I looked at that. Is it shiny? Is it too matte? And then I went outside. I did it out bright sunlight midday. I did it at night with the lights on in the house. So I basically took these 5 different papers, which were my favorites. I looked at it in different lighting conditions to help me figure out which paper looks best no matter what lighting conditions that my portfolio would be viewed under. And that's how I chose the paper that I wanted. Again, I chose 11 by 17 because I felt that that was the perfect width for my portfolio. I did consider the idea of making my portfolio vertical, which is all my images, basically all my images are vertical. So you would think, why didn't you just make it like a magazine, vertical? But I felt like that would not be impressive. Like the 9 by 16 ratio in vertical manner is way too long. Imagine this opening up like that. I think that it just would be super awkward. That's why I decided to go landscape, even though all my images are vertical shots. So when it came to the layout, it was difficult. You know, I was limited because I can't make my entire portfolio all vertical images, but you know, I snuck in every once in a while a full page wide shot. You could see like that. What would I do different if I was printing this portfolio again? This is a good question. I don't know that I would change so much. Perhaps my portfolio is a little bit all over the place when it comes to the margins. No one has made that comment to me yet of your margins are not, the ratio of your margins are not cohesive through your entire portfolio. No one has made that comment to me. So I don't know if I would change it for sure, but that's probably what bothers me the most. For example, you could see the margins over here versus probably the next page. You could just tell that they're totally different. But you know, that's me just being critical on what I do, and us photographers are never happy with anything that we do. So maybe I wouldn't change anything. Go ahead, Paige.
So we do have a few questions, and someone is asking, do you think that mixing the horizontal and vertical images is distracting at all?
Is it distracting that I have both in my portfolio?
Yes, a mix of vertical and horizontal.
I would say not, because if you did have all vertical images in your entire portfolio, people would get bored. I think your eye would get bored. You need a little bit of mix of both in a portfolio. Otherwise, yeah, I think that you would just, like, listen, if I shot everything landscape like I used to back in the day, all my shots were landscape, none of them were vertical, then yes, I would love to have this portfolio only landscape shots. However, to make this entire portfolio only vertical shots, I think that would be a little bit of an eyesore. I feel like every once in a while you do need these full page images to really break up all those vertical shots.
Yeah. Did you mix color and black and white images in your book?
Yes. I don't think I have any pages that are completely black and white, actually, because that's not really what I'm known for. I don't really, in the fashion world, what my clients, they have never a single time requested a black and white shot. So over here you can see how this isn't a true black and white. There are blue undertones in there, but you could see how I did go with a black and white shot on one side and then color on the next side. Like you see here, not often at all, because again, I don't shoot much black and white, but I have mixed the two, and I think it's fine.
I know you already mentioned that you use the Entrada rag throughout the entire book. Did you ever consider mixing different papers?
Honestly, I never even considered that. I don't know why I would. Maybe because black and white would look better on a different paper. Maybe that's an idea, but I think people would notice if you have, as they're flipping through the pages, they would like try to see if maybe this is two pages because it's thicker or it's a different paper. So I don't know if I would mix two different species of paper in a portfolio. Have you ever heard of someone do that before, Paige?
I actually haven't, but it does sound pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Um, I know this might not pertain to you because you do a lot of fashion portrait photography, but do you combine different subjects, such as sports, landscape, street work? I know you kind of have one genre, but what do you think about kind of combining different subjects into one portfolio?
I think that's a good idea. I think that if you find that it flows well, you could mix up different shots. I think if you're that diverse with your work that you're doing lifestyle and then you're doing high fashion stuff and you could find two images that go together, I think it's kind of like photography. In photography, you have a lot of rules. There's a lot of rules. Like you can't cut off in the middle of the fingers or right in the middle of the wrist. These are big no-nos. And there's a lot of other things when it comes to lighting, like harsh lighting, where you have harsh shadows under the eyes or nose and stuff like that. It's very important to know all the rules when it comes to photography. But a true professional will know when to break the rules and it looks right. So yes, I would probably say as a general rule of thumb, you don't want to mix different, like totally different things together in the portfolio on one spread. However, if you do it right, it may work really well. So I would never say never and no. I would say in the right instance, it might look really nice if you do that.
Yeah, cool. And how many pages were you able to fit? Do you know?
I never counted, but there's way too many.
It's a lot.
Yeah. I have way too many images in my portfolio. I honestly never read up on the do's and don'ts in a portfolio and how many pages there should be. I kind of got excited and I printed a lot in here, which is why when I meet a client, I will jump straight to a section of my portfolio that I know that I want them to see. Whether like over here, you see this is all eyewear. Over here, sunglasses and regular glasses. So if I know a client wants to see that, I'll jump to this part of the book, which I know has a lot of those kind of images. The right way to do it is to take all the pages out, and right before you meet a client, and a lot of commercial photographers do this, they put in only the pages that pertain to that client. So for example, I could easily cut my book in half right now if I just come and take out this entire section of children's photography. This will cut my portfolio size in half. But that would mean that I would need to travel. Like for example, I'm in New Jersey for the summer for 3 months. That would mean that I would have to put this in a box along with another 30 prints in there so I could swap it out as I meet different people. So I didn't do that, and I probably should do that at some point, take out some pages from my portfolio. I don't know. I think maybe people said that 40 images or pages in a portfolio is what it should be at, or maybe that's even too much. Maybe like 30 should be the max. But again, to each their own.
Right. And that was someone else's question, was how often do you change out images from your portfolio?
So me being totally honest, because that's the kind of guy I am, I don't do it often at all because my printer, the ink dried up in it since I didn't print for like 6 months. So I have to go and purge all of the cartridges and do all that stuff. And then I have to go and figure out all my settings again for the printer to print more pages. So it's been probably 9 months, a year since I added any new prints, and I have a ton of new work that I could be adding to this. So I say after each shoot that you do, if you got a great 1, 2, 3 images that you want to add, continuously print. Don't be lazy like me, Yeah.
And how are all the prints holding up when you have people constantly going through them? Did you use anything to protect the prints from all the fingerprint?
Yeah. So Moab has a spray. I forgot what the name of the spray is, but after each print, lay it out outside, and then just, it's a spray paint, just even coats back and forth, keep it, I think, 12 inches or whatever away from the pages. One thing that I ran into that you guys should definitely be super careful about is as my prints were coming out, I was stacking them next to my printer. That was a huge mistake because they weren't fully dry. And if you look carefully, you could see like the edge of this print, you see that ink from the next page went onto the margin. So that was a mistake that I made. As you print, lay them out individually, spray them, and then wait for it to dry to put it together. So be very careful about that. But here's the thing that people are so worried about their portfolio, like, hey, be very careful, don't drink, eat, do anything anywhere within a mile of your portfolio. You might rip or spill or something. To me, when you go to someone's library, if you see all their books are perfectly neat and the pages are crisp, no wrinkles and anything, what do you think of that guy's library? He has a library and he never used it and no one ever touched a book in his library. When you see a book that's really nicely used, you're like, you know what? This guy actually does use his books. So the fact that my portfolio, the pages are slightly banged up, corners are a little bit bent, I'm more than happy, because when people see that, they see like, oh, this guy's portfolio actually gets around, it gets used, So for me, I actually look forward. Whoever wants, come by my house, bend some pages. That's what's up. You know what I'm saying?
I didn't think of it that way, but it's interesting. And then aside from your images in there, what else did you include in your portfolio? I see you have like a cover page. Did you include anything else?
So I think I went to Michael's or maybe online. I got this like wax paper. I don't even know it's made for a book. I don't remember what it says. Just like look for a wax paper. It came in a pack of like 20 of them. It's just like a piece of wax paper. Again, I put one of those strips on here, and I think it just protects the front page from the cover and the leather and stuff like that, and it just looks a lot more official, So I added that wax paper. Then again, just kept it simple. My name, exact same font and size as the cover of my portfolio, and boom, you go straight into the images from there. So that's it for the front over here. And on the back, I didn't put one of those papers on it. And if you look over here closely, I have my name right here. Again, cool. It's the same machine. Basically, we wanted to test how deep that laser would burn through the wood. So I'm like, you know what, just do my name, and inside the back cover, no one is really going to see that anyways in case we screw up. But it worked out well. It was a little bit too deep, so it's a good thing we did that.
Cool. Someone is asking about the sticky paper. So it's not a sticky paper, it's actually the adhesive strip. And if anyone has used our Flint Portfolio before, we use the same adhesive strip, so it's on our website too, 8.5 by 11 and 13 by 19.
So the Flint Portfolio, let's talk about that for a minute. I don't know much about it, so Paige, jump in here and talk about the Flint Portfolio that you guys offer. What is it exactly?
Yeah, so we have an 8.5 by 11 and a 13 by 19 portfolio book that you can actually put together yourself. It's very easy. The 8.5 by 11, it comes portrait, and then you can also get the 13 by 19, the landscape size. You can use an adhesive strip, so you can print your images on any Moab paper. The adhesive strip goes on the edge of it, front or back, it doesn't matter, and then you can kind of just put your images together into this book, and it's a really simple DIY process of creating your own portfolio. So it's on our website, and it's also through our resellers, so definitely check that out.
So people do their own printing. This is basically just the hardware and the cover?
Yep, and then any type of paper. So any 8.5 by 11 or 13 by 19 paper fits inside. Okay. You just use that adhesive strip that could adhere to any paper.
Got it, okay. So here is, let me share this with you guys. I found a picture of the script. Don't mind me. This is me in my woodworking shop in the winter. But you can see how the script, I put it inside of the wood just to show you. And then here is another picture of my of the spine before I added any leather or anything. You can see the screws over there. And I think that I have, I'm looking for those strips individually.
And while you're looking for those, someone is asking if the paper was double-sided, and Chaturag is double-sided,
Yeah.
so you can.
Yeah, so that's actually a good question. I forgot to address that. Some of the papers, and it'll tell you right in the sample pack, it has a little label on the bottom. It'll tell you whether it's a double side or not. So that was also a big factor in ruling out which papers that I was going to use. The double side is a must. Listen, also Moab has a roll. I forgot how many feet, maybe 75 feet or something of rolls, and they have that for the Chaturag. So if you wanted to make a custom size, or you just wanted to, like the Epson P800 does take rolls, put a fat roll of paper inside there. And I don't know if the printer cuts or not. It possibly cuts paper, I'm not sure, but some printers do cut the paper after it finishes making a print, which is really cool. This is the spray for anyone who was wondering.
And Dani, can you talk about how you use the spray? Did you wait for the prints to dry and then spray it, or how did you use it?
Right. So yeah, the second half of my portfolio, when I remembered that I need to spray it after I print, yeah, you gotta print, you gotta spray, and then wait. You wait for it to dry before you go stacking them. I'm trying to see find a picture of those strips. Any other questions that we have coming in?
Yes. For the Chaturag, do you remember if you used the natural or the bright? Natural,
yeah.
Cool.
Yep, that's the one I used. And again, guys, you could click on that link that I shared. Paige could email that out to everyone. But I have all the pictures that I'm looking at now is literally I took pictures of every single step of the way from the beginning to end of my process. So you'll see pictures of all the products and everything that I used.
Do you have your own self-portrait in your portfolio?
No, good question. Maybe I should add that. I never. Yeah, definitely right there on the front cover. People want to see my face. No, I didn't. Do people do that? Maybe people could leave in the comments whether that's a thing to post put a picture of yourself. You know,
maybe as an info page.
Yeah, like an info page. Well, if I was to mail out my portfolio, I would definitely do that. I would definitely have an about page in there, but I never mailed out my portfolio before. I don't think I would mail this out because it's very dear to me. You know, a lot of hard work went into this. I don't want to sit on someone's desk and never see it again. Yeah. But I have thought of the idea of taking like a 4x6 or like an 8x10 picture of myself making my portfolio. Just take that print, and I wouldn't install it in the portfolio, but I would have it like sitting inside the back cover because it's a great conversation starter. When people first take my portfolio, they're like, wow, this is heavy, this is big. And I'm like, yeah, I actually made the entire thing by myself. They're like, really? And they don't believe me. So if I had like an 8x10 of me working in my shop making my portfolio, I would just like take it out. I'll be like, yeah, here, check it out. And I would like grab it and show it to them, and they'll be like super impressed. So that is something I've thought of doing.
We do have another question about using the 190 gram paper instead of the 300. Do you notice that the images show through it all since it's a lighter weight paper?
No. This is not a light paper. This is by no means a light paper. You cannot, I mean, even if you put it up to a window, let me try now. I mean, if you put it up to a window, you could kind of see, but looking down, you cannot see through this paper. It's not like insanely thick, but it's not one of those see-through papers, not at all. I feel like this 190 was the perfect weight of paper that I chose for the portfolio. Is there a thinner one than this?
No, there isn't.
No, there isn't. So yeah, no. I do have it. It's 190 and 300, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
And then this one is kind of interesting. So when you go to the presentation with your portfolio, what do you do when you go to the presentation? Do you hand them the portfolio to go through, or do you show them certain images?
Okay, so this
work?
is a good question. So this is more of like the business side of having portfolio, and keep these kind of questions. So the technical questions, all those answers could be found online. I like these questions that are more on the business aspect of having a portfolio. So there are 2 times that I present my portfolio. Either it's at a photo shoot, or it's when I'm going to meet a client. I'll be like, hey, you have some time to meet me, whatever, or they have questions to discuss a photo shoot. So I'll go into them, and I don't right away like come into the office, here's my portfolio, I'm not going to do anything. It doesn't work like that. I have it sitting on my shoulder, I'll sit down, and then we'll start talking. And in middle of conversation, as they're discussing, okay, so for example, like what are some locations that you've worked with? What are some locations that you'll suggest? And I'll be like, I like shooting on the streets of New York City. I like shooting on farms. I try not shooting in parks. And actually, there's a really cool location I just came across. And that, like, you have to really casually bring it up. I'll be like, yeah, it's actually a really cool location I just recently did for a photo shoot. Let me show it to you. I have it in my portfolio here. I'll grab my portfolio, I'll open it, and I'll go to some random thing or whatever. I'll be like, here's the location right over here. Don't you love this? Like right over here, this editorial that I did a couple of months ago on a local farm that I found, and I just really love the textures and just the different background options we had on this farm. So I'll look for the first opportunity I could get to reference to something in my portfolio. I won't be like, hey, I have my portfolio here. Do you want to see my images? It doesn't really work that way. Your conversation has to be very fluid, very smooth, and then just like kind of indirectly find a reason to bring out your portfolio and put it on the table. That was when I'm meeting a client for a potential photo shoot, a potential client. Another time that I would do it would be on an actual photo shoot. And as I'm setting up all my camera gear and the models and the clients are sitting around on the couch, getting their hair and makeup done, I will take my portfolio, I'll put it on the table with everything else where the hair and makeup is set up or the food or whatever. And I'll take out my portfolio, I'll open it, and I'll put the portfolio on top of the cover so that they can see my name. Because if it's sitting inside of the sleeve, no one is going to touch it. But the second it's like this, and there's always someone who eventually will be like, oh, hey, cool, is that the portfolio that you have? Like on Instagram, like everyone knows about my portfolio. I'll be like, yeah, go ahead, take a look through it. And usually it'll be like a model or a client, they'll open it, and then everyone else jumps and they hover over it and they'll start looking through it. So those are the main 2 times that I have my portfolio and how I bring it out in front of people to see.
Cool. Another question, how do you balance your photographer's self-criticism with the photos you selected?
So I really left it, like what I did is I went through, I have a folder of all my favorite work, and it's mostly work that has been put onto my Instagram. So basically all my work that I've put onto social media, I have it sitting in a folder on my computer in low resolution. So I took that entire folder and I opened it up in Adobe Bridge and I culled all my work from like 2,000 or 3,000 images. I culled it down to, I think it was about 300 images. So I quickly, in full screen, I went through all my images one by one, and I just rated it either 1 or 0. And for each one that I kind of liked, I hit 1. And I took all those images that came out to be 300. I printed all those on 4x6s onto one side of the 4x6, not on both sides, on one side. So I bought like 6 or 7 packs of 4x6s, printed it all out onto those, and then I stopped there. You know, I chose 300 of my favorite images of all time, and I let everyone else do the choosing for me. I think that this is really important when it comes to choosing images on a photo shoot as well. You should cull it down to, like, let's say 1/5 of the images, and then show the images to different people. And I have like a WhatsApp chat with a couple people in it, and I send them, let's say, my top 20 images from a photo shoot, and I'll be like, which one do you guys like? And then I'll find the common denominator between the shots that are liked by everyone in the group. And like that, it narrows it down to the 5. Because as a photographer, you feel very strongly to a certain like certain one of your images, because let's say you were at the photo shoot, you just remember that there were really good vibes about that set of images. Maybe it was just like the location or whatever it was. And the truth is, to some stranger, if they saw that image, you'd be like, nothing special. But to you, you felt so special about it because you were just having a good vibe when you were taking that image, and you just think it's amazing. And it's really, to you, it's amazing, but to everyone else, it's like, okay, that's nothing special. So it's very important for us photographers to take in other people's opinions on your work. Well, this is my opinion as more of a business person than a photographer, because I want to make other people happy. I'm not trying to make myself happy. If you want to be successful in photography, it's not always about you and how you feel and what you want. Of course, it's important to shoot what you love and that kind of stuff. But what's more important is creating work that other people want. And it's not always what you want. It's not always what you think is amazing. Sometimes you have to listen to what other people say if you're trying to create stuff that's going to be popular out there in the world, which is why I let other people choose the images that I post on my Instagram. Because when I let other people choose, I know that when I post it onto Instagram, the world is going to like it because I took a poll of what people are going to like before I made those decisions. So I would say do the same thing for your portfolio. Narrow it down to a large set of images that you like, but then let other people choose the final images that go into your portfolio. I hope you guys found that helpful. I think that that's like a really good tip.
Yeah, it does help when you are looking at something so often to have someone else looking at it, for sure.
Exactly.
So do you have any advice for a student applying to art school regarding what to or what not to include in a portfolio?
Say that again. Sorry, I don't think I understood that.
If there's a student applying to art school, is there anything that you would say definitely include in your portfolio or definitely do not include in your portfolio?
Well, I can't be too specific because I don't exactly know what art or what the person's question is referring to. However, I will say that less is more. So the biggest problem I found with people showing me their work is they're showing me way too many images, and the world doesn't want to see 50 mediocre images. They want to see 20 very strong images. So less is more. Choose only a few of your top work to show in your portfolio. It is much more important. And I know that I'm contradicting myself since I have so many images in my portfolio, but this is something I struggle with as well, because you have so much you want to show people, but definitely try to show less than more. That's probably the number one tip.
Yeah. Why did you do a print portfolio and not just a digital portfolio?
Because when people see this versus an iPad that you swipe through, you book the client. It's as simple as that. If you've seen a print in person, it is so much more impressive than an iPad screen. People just swipe. They're just used to swiping on Instagram. You just keep swiping and swiping. You never like sit there and look at it. Like I could tell you firsthand, when people are looking through my portfolio, they spend a good 15 seconds on a page looking at all the details and everything. And they take their time. I watch them looking through this. When you show someone your pictures on an iPad, they look at the 3 pictures and boom, they're done. After the 3rd picture, they're already like, oh yeah, great work. My portfolio, they don't stop until they're to the last page. It is totally different. You cannot even compare it one bit. A printed portfolio in person, it is so different than seeing an image on your phone.
Yeah. So this is an interesting question. When you put together your portfolio, did you think about, okay, I want to put my best photos first and my least favorite last, or did you have any type of sequence that you kind of ordered them in?
The answer is no. I didn't put my best work first, not at all. And there's no, like, it's not categorized as what I want people to see most first and the opposite. It's really diverse. My entire portfolio, there's no like good section and bad section to it. There's just different sections to it. I did when I ended my portfolio, I did end with a picture that I thought that it's a picture that everyone's gonna love and they're gonna smile when they see it, because everyone loves children and everyone loves animals. So I ended my portfolio with this, and every time people turn to that shot at the end, they always smile. I don't know that if people would smile if my portfolio ended with this on the back. You see that? So I wanted when people get to the back of my portfolio that they should end with a smile. And so most of my pictures, they don't make you smile. They may make you go, wow. But when you have a shot like that, everyone just looks at it and they end up with a smile. So that was something that was a factor in choosing the right images for the right spot. Otherwise, no, my images are really, I have a pretty signature look to my work. And like I don't have one favorite shot really that I would say that this is the shot that I want everyone to see right away. If I were to say one of my shots that I love the most, and I mentioned it in the video, it is this shot over here of a girl. The first time she was in front of a camera, this was when probably 7 years ago, and I just like, it was a really popular shot, and so I said, you know what, I want to make this on its own page with nothing else on the page, because that's how special the image is to me. And it's this one over here. It's like you just get lost in her eyes. I didn't have to do much photoshopping to this image at all. This girl literally is a doll. If you saw her in person when I took this shot, this is exactly how she looked. She was just a doll, and I just captured like her like innocence, and everything just like worked out really well for that shot. And I find that that's one of my more popular shots. So for that, that's all the way towards the end of the portfolio. It's not something that I care for people to see right away. But again, my portfolio is not a specific order at all. It's just woman in the front and girls in the back, and a mixture of both in the middle. But it was just kind of whatever worked out when I was printing out. Another challenge to keep in mind, though, is that if I ever wanted to add images to my portfolio, this is why, I forgot to mention, this is why I haven't been updating my portfolio. Because the hardest thing is that, as you can see over here, this flows, right? So if I wanted to add another page, what I would have to do is I would have to reprint this page so that the other side would be my new picture. And then that would mean that also over here has to be new pictures to match the new picture over here, which means I have to reprint this. You know, it's complicated, as you could see. It's not like I could just print one page and stick it in. If I print a page and stick it in here, suddenly broke up these two shots. You understand what I'm saying? Then these wouldn't be side by side anymore. So the way I printed my portfolio is not the easiest way to add pictures to it. Physically, it is easy, but just the layout would get all screwed up, which is why I have seen photographers never print pictures on the back. So they only have pictures on one side of their portfolio. This side will not have a picture. You see a picture, the next picture is here, the next picture is here. This is always blank. So if your portfolio is set up that way, then you don't have an issue. It's very easy to add pages. They're like, I think Eric Almas's portfolio is done like that. And he's an amazing photographer. So it is possible not to run into the issue I have of adding pages. However, you have a blank page over here, which I was not a big fan of. And also, it's only half as many images in your portfolio and double the amount of pages if you want to have the same amount. That is my biggest dilemma. Aside from this thing not fitting into my backpack, those are the two biggest issues I have with the portfolio.
Right. I think we have time for like one or two more questions. Someone did ask, what's an acceptable size for a portfolio that's just a little bit smaller than yours? What's the smallest size that you would go?
Paige, I think you will probably have a better answer than me. I honestly don't know. What size is smaller than this?
I mean, there's 8.5 by 11, which I think still looks great. So I guess it kind of depends on what type of images you have and how large you really want to show them.
Right, except that 8.5 by 11 is not 9 by 16, is not a 4 by 6 ratio. That's 4 by 3, right?
I'm not sure.
It's not the same ratio. That's another issue. That's I think why I was attracted to 11 by 17, because portfolio that's smaller than this, the ratios is not going to be 9 by 16, which is what our cameras shoot in. It would be 4 by 3, I think, which is a different ratio. It's not a problem. Then you'll just have to, you'll have to cut paper. You'll probably have to cut paper if you want to go smaller. Or you just have the margins on your pages are different.
Right.
Yeah.
Someone noticed that you have some blank pages. Was that done on purpose to draw attention to a photo, or it was just the way it worked out?
Okay, so that was me adding a page and then realizing my issue over here. You see that? This was the issue. I wanted this page in my portfolio. I had to quickly print it because I was going to meet a client that makes women's coats. So I took this shot I did for Macaj, and I quickly printed it and stuck it into my portfolio. And that's how I ended up with this issue where I had a blank page.
Cool.
Yeah. I'll have to just, take this page out now and print onto the back. But it's not the way my portfolio is meant to be. I want pictures on every page except that one of that kid, that doll. She deserves her own page.
I agree. So I think we'll wrap it up there. And like I said in the beginning, Dani is an open book. So if you have questions for him, feel free to send him a message on Instagram or reach out to him. He does the mentoring on his website, which is also linked on our Moab TV page, so you can find his website and all of his information there.
I'm going to interrupt you. Before everyone leaves, hang on over here. This is me putting Paige on the spot. I did this with Wacom, and I don't know why I just thought of this now. Tell me if this is cool, Paige, okay?
No, it's not.
Okay, so if people take a screenshot right now of our live and they post it in their Instagram story, would you be willing to choose like 5 winners and send them a sample pack of paper?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do it.
Okay, if you're not cool with it, I'll pay for it. But this is
no, we're definitely cool with it.
Okay. So let me hold this up. Everyone take screenshots with your phone or whatever, and post it in your stories and tag Moab. You don't have to tag me. You could tag me if you want. I'll be more than happy. But go ahead and take a screenshot and tag Moab. And Moab, within 24 hours, I say, will choose 5 people to send sample packs of paper to. Cool?
Yeah, great.
All right, yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Dani.
Of course. Sorry to interrupt you over there. I just wanted to do that before everyone signed out on us.
No, great idea. And this will be, an email will be sent tomorrow with this recorded, so you can watch this again. It will also be on our YouTube channel in a few days, so definitely stay updated and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so that people could watch this video in the future. And I will try to remember to put all that info under the videos or send it to Paige for the person to go to find all that information on the technicalities of printing, like your Photoshop settings, printer settings. And also we'll post a link to not only my video, but also that shared album that I have on Google Photos with all the pictures of the entire process from beginning to start on printing, building, the cover and the carry case and all that stuff. Cool?
Cool.
All right. Thank you all
thanks
for
everyone.
signing in.
All right, bye.
What's up, guys? Peace and love. Till next time.